Now that I have run the musicians off, good morning, and thank you for being here for the budget forum. So, I'd like to start by recognizing the budget committee this year. Janice Estel, Shannon O'Connor is our bookkeeper extraordinaire who keeps us all together. Becky Reed, Faith Trapp, Pastor Harold, and Chuck Wetstein were our main budget committee participants and myself this year. Lynn Carlson, Dusty Knight, Pastor Lisa, and Lori Golden were also officially on the committee, but were unable to participate a lot in our ponderings. So I'd like to say a few comments just to start with before we get into the numbers for 2024. Just kind of where we got to where we are right now. And you may recall at the end of last year, we were facing a budget deficit. Our reserves were depleted through the pandemic and all it brought, and unanticipated expenses for building maintenance. And on top of that, we were about to launch the construction project for the fellowship hall. So if the school had not used some of their grant funds to replace several of the air conditioning units that went out at $11,000 apiece, and if efforts were not made to reduce expenses, we really would have been in an even more serious situation. So an appeal went out to the congregation, and there was a tremendous response. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you for those who generously stepped up and enabled us to actually end the year with a surplus after that. And those surplus dollars were placed in facility reserve funds and expense reserve funds to help rebuild those funds that had been depleted throughout the last several years. And our 2023 budget was very lean this year as a result of that. But God is good and takes care of us. We had a remarkable occurrence at the beginning of this year with two large $20,000 donations. One was from a member and one was from a non-member, which was just a tremendous blessing to us. You as a congregation continued to contribute to Building to Bless in spite of the official campaign being over. And we had a big savings in building maintenance this year. We got through a really hot, long summer without any of our fragile elderly, that's a PT term, physical therapy term, air conditioning units going out. So we were happy about that. The renovation went smoothly. There were no unexpected expenses with that. And we actually saved a little in salary and payroll expenses because of the departure of Scott and Catherine before the end of the year. So this year, the Budget Committee decided we would meet quarterly to review financials and hopefully ward off any problems that we saw toward, like we did at the end of last year. We did that, and we were on target. And then as the budget calendar year approached for us to begin working on it, we asked everyone to submit requests for the budget for this year. And then we had our giving campaign, and Janice compiled the estimates of our giving based on the cards that were received back and the historical giving. And when these were put together for the first draft of the 2024 budget, we had about a $40,000 shortfall, even though our pledges were up about 10% over last year. So for estimated giving, we used 94% of the pledges, which is what we used for 2023. And we're right on target to meet that this year, minus the $40,000 large gifts that we had. So we're going to use that 94% of pledges again for this year as our estimated giving. We know life happens, and some folks can make that pledge and then not be able to honor that commitment. So this is the number we used. So when we saw the $40,000 deficit, we asked the Budget Committee went to council and asked for them to set the priorities based on what we were seeing. And if you want to put the next slide up, these were the priorities, and these aren't in any big particular order. But the council decided that salary increases were important to employees. We have not increased salaries in a number of years. Inflation's been high, and salaries have really been falling behind. There's a priority listed of increasing giving to the ELCA. Every year at these budget forums, it seems like there's an appeal to give more to the community, give back to God. And this, in 2023, we were only able to give 1.3% of our giving. So we would like to get that up to 10%. And this year we are planning on a 3% increase, up from 1.3, and we hope to gradually build that back up to 10%. And I know some of you will welcome this, and some of you will say, why do we give anything to the ELCA? What do they do for us? And Pastor Harold sent an email to the council after that meeting with this statement that I wanted to read to you, because it really it touched me. He wrote, with the world facing quite a bit these days, from war and conflict to massive increases in world migration, to the new abnormal in heat waves and droughts and flooding that's connected to a warming climate, to local and regional widening of economic gaps leading to food insecurity and housing needs, to a dysfunctional U.S. political system that's hindering providing needed aid around the world, which means the stability of nonprofit giving is all the more vital in this time. Increasing our mission support and having a goal to return to being a tithing congregation is, I believe, a commitment and desire to live boldly into our purpose statement. Mission support is how the ELCA makes big impacts around the world with need. Thank you. So a couple of weeks ago, we had the quilts out here in the congregation on the pews, and that was one way we reach out tangibly to the rest of the world in our mission support, but the ELCA needs dollars also, so we hope to be able to provide more for them. Going on down the list of priorities, we don't have much in reserve in this congregation, and we feel that it's important for us to have some sort of operational expense reserve, like your family savings account. A few months of cash tucked away so that if something happens, like the pandemic or like a major weather event or the loss of a major donor, that reduces significantly the contributions that we receive. We need something to fall back on to pay our salaries, to pay our mortgage that we have now, and to pay the utilities on the building, those types of things. So it's important for this council to begin to do that. And we did a little investigation. Janice helped us pull this together. We don't know who these people are, but we know that 26% of our general fund giving comes from 3 families in this congregation. So if we lost one of those 3 families, we would really be hurting financially from our income. So the next item that was a priority was building maintenance. We have a beautiful new, almost new looking fellowship hall, refreshed fellowship hall and kitchen, and we want to keep it that way. We want to refresh the rest of the campus around it. There's been a lot of deferred maintenance over the years, so that is also a priority. And then lastly, but not least, the youth. Recruiting a new youth minister is important. Supporting our younger members and growing their faith through their activities with the church is a priority. So these priorities were taken back to the Budget Committee for further deliberation on how to balance the budget, and this is what we ended up doing. We came up with plan for a 3% salary increase for Pastor Harold and the staff, with the exception of Pastor Lisa, and I'll talk about her situation in just a moment. That increase from 1.3 to 3% giving is in the budget this year to the ELCA. We did not set aside funding for that operational reserve savings account this year, but the recommendation is that any 2023 surplus dollars that we have be set aside for that purpose. And then the goal is to build this fund over time, so we have several months of operational expenses in that fund. And the new council that comes on board next week will be the ones who determine how much that should be, what the bottom number in that fund should be. We directed funds to the Facility Repair Reserve Fund and the Expense Reserve Fund to improve readiness for major unexpected repairs. And the property committee here has been underfunded for a good number of years, and there is some maintenance that's been deferred on our campus. And we would like to begin to address some of those concerns. So I sent Steve, as chairman of the property committee, an email requesting that they put together a list of priorities of those projects so that we can begin chipping away at getting those done. Those projects should not be funded routinely from the reserve fund, but we have not directed any additional funds to the property line in the budget at this year. And I'll talk a little bit more about the youth minister position when we start looking at the numbers. In addition to these priorities, Pastor Harold has informed us of an insurance change he is making. Deborah now is benefits eligible with her work. They want to shift the family health insurance policy to Deborah's employer's policy, with the church paying the out-of-pocket portion. The church has been paying the entire amount of the family's health insurance. And this would reduce the congregation's expense considerably, like $17,000 we would save by doing this. But the savings would need to be put in reserve. We can't just go spend it in the event that something should happen, that he needs to go back on Portico, or if, heaven forbid, he should leave and another pastor comes, then, and they need to go back on Portico, the previous insurance plan, we wouldn't want to be caught in a lurch having to come up with all that money right away. So we want to put another reserve fund together to help grow that amount by what it would cost the congregation for 2 years of family health coverage for a pastor. So we have put most of that $17,000 to start that fund in the proposed budget. Let's see. When looking at the salary numbers on that sheet in your laps, it looks like Pastor Harold's increase is a lot more than 3%. But this is due to that benefit shift. And instead of a separate line item below his salary compensation for insurance, it's lumped up in his salary area on the sheet. So anyway, it's a little deceiving when you look at the numbers. Pastor Lisa has very politely and persistently this year requested that she be enrolled in Portico's retirement plan with the corresponding reduction in the stipend. If you recall, when we hired her, she was not allowed to enroll in Portico, which is the ELCA-sponsored insurance or benefits company for the church. She was not enrolled in that, but she was given a stipend to cover her retirement, her life, her disability, and her health insurance out of pocket, prorated based on her part-time status. We looked at this carefully. There was concern initially that if we offered one part-time employee a benefits package and not all of the part-time employees, that would be a problem for us, a discriminatory. It ended up doing a lot of research and finally ended up with a legal opinion that it was okay because her employee classification as clergy would be different than the non-clergy staff. So we have that in writing. And so we were moving forward with adding her to the Portico retirement benefit. But that comes along with, because it's bundled, having to add her life and disability insurance as well. Health insurance is part of that package, but it is possible for folks to waive that amount. So she will waive that amount. We would reduce the stipend based on the premiums that we pay for her life and health and disability, and subtracting that, life and disability, not life and health, but in subtracting the retirement, the life, and the disability from her stipend, it's woefully short of what it would take to cover their out-of-pocket health insurance benefits. And we just didn't feel like that was right. There was no provision made in her stipend to ever increase it based on increasing health benefits. So we have agreed to increase, to add her to Portico and adjust her benefit package to include all the parts of it. It will eliminate her stipend, but this all comes to more than that 3% increase that we were giving everyone else, so her base rate was not adjusted as a result of that change. And the council did vote, when Catherine Terrell left, the council did vote to increase her hours from her original higher amount of 20 up to 25 hours a week, and that all the benefits except for the health are based on a percentage of income, so that increased the amount that needed to go to those categories. So it was all complex and convoluted and complicated, and I hope that makes a little sense to you. Monthly focus giving has been very successful. More has been given into those initiatives than in previous years. So we decided this was something we wanted to continue into 2024. And then when the budget committee finished with all of this, it was sent back to the council. The council voted to approve the proposed budget and bring it to you today. So we're here today to discuss the numbers. So you have a sheet in front of you, which is was handed to me when I walked in the door. I've seen the numbers, but I've not seen them quite on this piece of paper before. So in going through the income, we'll look at the general fund giving. So you can see the 2023 budget, what is estimated, and this is 3/4 of the year of actuals and the anticipated fourth quarter income and the 2024 budget. Our target for Lenten offering was not met this year. We are putting back what we had hoped for last year, but it's taken out right below it in expenses. So, other income includes some interest and just various smaller things. You'll see the expenses. Mission support to ELCA was bumped up to that 3%, based at 3% of the general fund giving, which is more. So it'll be $14,474. Again, the Lenten mission is there. The alms fund is budgeted at $1,000 and has been for several years, but over $8,000 have been distributed to the community members through the alms fund. And this has been supported by members like you who give to a restricted fund for alms. And there are rules about who gets this. There are some restrictions on how much each family can get over a year and what it goes for. And they do keep track of this so that folks are not taking advantage of the gifts. And several of the churches work together to help coordinate their services. So we give gas money and utility money, and other churches will help out with rent and food and other things like that. So, Ministry of the Pastors shows the changes that I talked about with the salary, the 3% increase, the insurance changes, the associate pastor salaries, they're also, total change is actually decreased because of the change in insurance with Pastor Vanacek. Worship supplies, we increased the music director by 3%. We did not increase our organists and musicians or the handbell director. Yes?
Is there a reason why the music director's 3% isn't based on the 28,000 that was in the budget for 2023?
Olivia was budgeted a $2,000 increase last year, and she declined to accept that so that it could be attributed to other places in the budget. So her salary, in effect, has been $26,000 this year, so that was what we based the increase off of. So there's always been a little controversy over the worship supply thing because I order the flowers for the sanctuary. I get blasted frequently because I spend too much on flowers, but we're not spending anything on flowers that comes out of these funds. What we spend on flowers is from a contribution specifically for flowers that comes to us. The only thing the congregation purchases are poinsettias at Christmas, lilies at Easter, and palms on Palm Sunday. And the lilies and poinsettias, we ask for contributions back to offset that cost. We do send lilies and poinsettias to the home communion folks, and so that is the only expense for flowers in that. For the youth and family ministry section, we increased the salary annually to $55,000. It was previously $50,000. It shows it's $45,43 for the year because Scott left before the end of the year. We had a lot of conversation about this. This is an important position to us, but we feel like it's going to be hard to recruit someone, so we increased the salary, but we prorated that salary down because we don't think somebody's going to be able to be hired by January 1 and be on board. So we reduced it by a third, thinking it would take several months to recruit and onboard that person. Youth activities, there was a huge amount of money requested of the Council and Budget Committee for youth activities, and this is for the National Youth Gathering and for camp expenses. We accepted and put in the budget what Scott had originally requested, which was $6,000, which was a much smaller number, but we felt like the congregation has always been real generous to the youth for their camping and assembly experiences, and we felt like some additional fundraising would help cover those expenses. Plus, we wanted to encourage the young people to participate in that fundraising so that if they have a dog in the fight, maybe they'll appreciate it a little more. A little sweat equity never hurts. So we kept that at 6,000. So just look.
I have a question about
Yes.
this section. It's called Youth and Family Ministry, but the only expenses I see in here say youth. Where, maybe this is not the place for that question, but where does family come into this? And
This is the whole budget.
what?
This is the whole budget right here. What you see is a summary page that doesn't have all of the categories. And these numbers on my printout are not the final numbers. And they're not in that category. They're down in parish ministry. and Christian education, which is the top of the second page. Scott had only requested about $500 for Vacation Bible School this year, and we decided that we probably needed to bump that up, so we put it up to $2,500. The Sunday school was budgeted for $750. We spent more than that. We want to revitalize our Sunday school, so it is budgeted at $1,350 for this current year, for this coming year. So, parish ministry totals are there. I don't know if you have any questions about those.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do we always keep an amount of, I was looking at the sabbatical expense category. Are we putting money in that for the
Future sabbaticals.
sabbatical?
Yeah, that's what it.
And
And-
council retreat, what's that all?
That is not a council retreat. That is $3,500 to finish out the 3-year lead commitment. So, the council retreat has been held at my house the last 2 years and has not been at any expense to the congregation. So,
And the congregational life category, what comes under that?
do you want to speak to that, Pastor V, what congregational life includes?
Sure.
We are recording this. I should ask y'all to come to the microphone, but I didn't, so.
Yeah, so in congregational life, things come out of there like we do Lenten devotionals or Advent devotionals or the quarterly devotionals, all that stuff comes out of there. If we do a special gift, or like if we are giving thanks to outgoing council members, gifts come out of that. Every once in a while, there's some donuts in there. I know people have kind of talked about donuts, but
Donuts have
I
become a
think
very
donuts are
controversial
core
item.
piece of the congregational life that I've discovered. So when it's no donuts, we make sure we have donuts. So it's those kind of pieces like that, gratitude pieces and faith-forming pieces.
Okay. Church administration includes our bookkeeper, whose salary is not, well, she's not salary, she's contracted, but she has not asked for, nor have we granted her an increase, and boy, she needs to be paid about 3 times that, in my opinion. She's very generous with her time and her talents for us. This budget includes Peyton's salary, and the school has been paying Peyton for Fridays for a couple of years now. The budget, the grant money that they have that has been supporting that salary, it ends at the end of May. So we did not include continuing her Friday hours in this budget. We decided that we would recommend that it would be reassessed when that time came to see if those hours are needed, and if so, how the finances look at that point in time, and make that decision then to continue her Friday hours. And I can tell you Pastor Harold probably wants them to continue because we have 2 people pregnant. Pastor Lisa is expecting and Olivia is expecting. They're both going to be off this summer, so he's going to be all alone in the office if we don't hire a youth minister. Cindy will be helping him out on Fridays a lot, maybe. But we're going to have to do something to help fill in the gaps there. Church operations and maintenance, like I said, we didn't increase the building maintenance or grounds maintenance a lot. Just we need to put a plan together before that's done. And we do have the restricted funds if they're needed for that. You'll see the mortgage. Our mortgage payments are $2,418 a month, I believe, and they have begun. So that is budgeted in there. And insurance costs.
What's the specifics on the mortgage? How long and what's the interest rate?
I'll let Chuck answer that question on the mortgage. Is he? Yeah, the question is what the terms are on the mortgage.
So what we have is a 20-year loan with a 5-year arm. So every 5 years, the interest rate is reviewed and looked at. Our first 5 years are at 3 7/8%. So our payments are $24.18 per month right now. In talking with Mission Investment last week, I've asked them to give us a amortization sheet for an increased percentage, just so we'd have that information to analyze, and I asked for it at 8% just to see what that number would be. So that if we set up a mortgage reserve fund, then we could look at that and analyze what we might need to consider as we look forward toward our mortgage.
How much did we borrow?
We borrowed $400,000, and I think in your annual report, you'll have a summary of the B2B and what those costs were, where they went, and what was left, and things like that as well.
Actually, Becky has a few copies of that here today, if anybody is interested in seeing those numbers a little ahead of time. There's not enough copies for everyone to have one, but
The whole building project, anybody wanted to look at now? Anybody else want to say?
insurance includes our property insurance and liability insurance, and we have an umbrella policy for the school for injury protection. And
I have one more question under church operation maintenance.
okay, under church,
The staff got a 3% raise. What about Donna? Custodial services, she got $70.
Donna is paid by contract, and that is negotiated between her and Steve. I know she did receive an increase during the year, this current year that we're in, because her contract was redone at that time. So we're not planning on that changing at this point in time. Anyway, back to insurance. Our property insurance has a pretty high deductible, and part of this expense is a buy down of that deductible down to 1%. So there's about a $5,000 or $6,000 charge to buy that down, and it's something to manage the risk that we incur. And because our reserves are so small, we felt like it was money well spent to buy that deductible buy down policy. If we get our reserves up, we would like to eventually get away from having to spend that money and to keep it ourselves for our own reserve accounts. But for the last several years, it's been in there. Merchant fees are high. It's almost as controversial as the donuts are, but we have, as a council and budget committee, decided that we want to flip the switch, so to speak, on some of the online giving contributions that are done by credit card to charge for those merchant fees, and give the option out to be what you have to go in and check, rather than you, right now, you opt in to pay those. We want you to opt in to not pay those, if that makes sense. We are charged about $4,000 a year for those merchant fees. If you give online through a credit card, the transaction fee is 2.65% plus 39 cents per transaction that the church pays. If you do it through an electronic funds transfer, like a debit from your checking account, it's 0.6% plus 20 cents per transaction. So if folks would switch from credit card to their debit card or electronic funds transfer, it would save the church a lot of money. So we are going to announce at the meeting next week that that change will be made starting in January. Another thing we want to announce is that because the church is a not-for-profit organization, we should not be paying for sales tax. And over the course of January through August, we have paid $860 in sales tax and $200 in tips that we are not supposed to need to pay as a nonprofit organization. So we are requesting that everyone use the nonprofit status, go through the steps of getting that approval from any vendor that you purchase things from, and if you return your receipts to the church office for reimbursement, that the tax would not be reimbursed to you. So these are just low-hanging fruit items that nobody really likes to hear, but we are scraping, trying to get every dollar squeezed out of this budget that we can. So, let's see. So our total budget expenses are $511,261, which is a negative $37.93 net operating revenue before we transfer out of the restricted funds. And as you can see on your sheet, we're planning to put $8,500 into the expense reserve fund and $8,500 into the facility repair reserve. That G&A health insurance savings fund, $11,920 is what was left from the $17,000 that we're saving on Pastor Harold's family's insurance that we didn't spend on other salary increases. And then the associate pastor fund, we are taking out $32,713 for Pastor Lisa's salary. She had a gift, or there was a gift to the congregation to cover 3 years of her salary. We are taking out, and then of course we bumped her salary up when we increased her hours by the amount, not the hourly rate. But this year we are taking out 75% of her original salary amount from that gifted fund to try to begin to absorb the amount of her salary into our operating budget and to preserve and extend the life of that fund. So the increased hours, that pay, we're already taking it out of the operational budget. So, and that brings us to the balanced budget as it is proposed. So for the restricted fund transfers, especially the expense reserve and the facility reserve fund, there have been some conversations and some confusion around what these funds are meant to be for. So we are in the process of coming up with some definitions for what those funds are used for, and they're not ready for prime time yet, so I don't have them to share with you today, but we are trying to put some guidelines around that and who can make decisions around what those funds go for and how they are to be used. We know that we need to plan better for the future, especially for things that don't come up every year, like the National Gathering for Youth that's every 3 years. We need to spread those expenses out over 3 years. The Synod meeting is remote 1 year, but the other year we travel and there are expenses with transportation and lodging and food for those events. We need to spread those out over the years. And also for sabbaticals. Now that we have 2 pastors, we have 2 sabbaticals to cover. So we need to be looking forward more than just 1 year with our budget. So the last couple of years, we've tried to project those numbers forward, and we looked a little harder at it this year. If you'll show the next slide, Olivia. It doesn't look real good right now. There's a lot of negative numbers in those parentheses down in the bottom right corner. So we are going to need to look carefully at what sorts of income we have coming in, what sorts of expenses we spend our money on over the next years. So I just wanted you to be aware of the challenges that that we have, there are some sizable gaps that will need to be taken care of. Of course, we started with the $40,000 one this year, and we're able to work through that. But I think as a congregation, we are very blessed, we are very generous, we are very dedicated. And as Faith said in her devotion to the budget committee the other day, with God all things are possible. So I think we will get there. I think we've come through some hard times with the pandemic. We've got the great new fellowship hall. We have a lot of new members that came on board on last Sunday, and I think the future is bright for us in spite of those numbers. So, are there any other questions, Ms. Dale?
Carol, last Sunday we had the special project for blessings. What were the results of that project?
The question is, what was the result for the fundraising of the Blessings thing last Sunday? And I don't know. I haven't heard that number. Does anybody here know? Becky says it's a little over 6,000, but the number's not final yet. So, Lori,
You know, I have to ask. I was not involved, I wasn't able at all to attend.
would you like to come to the mic?
No,
So,
not really.
well-
I think everybody can hear me, can you not?
but we're recording this, so.
Nobody else has.
I know. But your question's going to be long and complicated, I can tell. Either one, I think.
A lot of these are just clarifications because I looked at this as most people did, this is the first time I'm seeing the numbers. So just clarification. So we're going from a 455 budget income to 482, which is more than $27,000. And is that all based on the pledge cards or not?
Janice calculated that number. She took out the $40,000 special contributions that we had this year.
Okay.
She looked at the pledge cards that were received, and then for those members who did not turn in a pledge card, what their historical giving looked like, and calculated that number for us. And then took, what did I say, 94 or 90-something% of that number.
What? All right, so it wasn't 100%.
It is not 100%, no.
Okay. Next question, clarification again. Lead pastor salary. So is the 36, which is like $12,800 more than what was in the budget. Is this part of the reason that the health insurance line is zero? And what?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
The 23,262 is this year's salary. 36,093 includes a 3% increase,
Right.
but it also includes their out-of-pocket expenses for health insurance for the family. However, with the caveat that they don't know, or do you have 24 rates? No, you don't have 2024 rates. So we took the 2023 rates and added 10% on. So that number is a little soft on that insurance number. But that was what that increase was for.
And is that the same reason for the associate pastor going from 24 to 10,984? Is that because of the stipend? Because that amount is also zero for 2024.
Right. The stipend is going to be eliminated. We are going to pay her portico expenses for retirement, disability, and life, because those are bundled and you can't have retirement without the disability and life. We will require her to waive their health insurance benefit, but we will pay, and it has been added to her salary, her 2024 family out-of-pocket health insurance expenses times 5/8, because she is a 5/8 employee.
Okay. Youth minister. Are we looking at hiring a full-time minister or part-time?
that is the plan at this point in time, to hire a
Full-time?
full-time youth minister with a base annual salary of $55,000, but then it was prorated to 2/3 of the year. And youth and family minister, I sat in on Scott's performance appraisal, and that is a big, big job. He has a lot of responsibilities, or that person has a lot of responsibilities that are kind of hidden from sight, and I don't think he really ever got a lot of credit for a lot of things he was doing for this congregation. So,
And thank you for clarifying the merchant fees, because I was concerned about that. But I'm glad we're switching that. All
I
right,
know
you
it's-
had mentioned one, I think it was on maybe the first screen that you had, that whatever we do end up having as a net income this year, that's gonna go into the facility repair reserve, is that correct?
It's gonna go into a new operational emergency expense reserve fund. We need a name for it.
Okay,
If you can come up with a good name, that's great. But just like a savings account in case we have some major event happen and giving
no, I'm all for that, we need to do that. I
severely
totally agree with that.
impacted.
But are you
Yeah.
talking about the net reserve before transfers, or net reserve, or net income before transfers, or net income after transfers amount?
Oh, that's an accounting question I'll have trouble
Yeah, it is.
answering.
Okay.
I guess
Because
that
that's a
would be
big
after
difference.
transfers.
I mean, right now, we're looking at 19,761, but after the transfers, we're looking at 67,000.
I know last year, at the end of the year, we had the surplus and we were able to add to a lot of the reserve accounts
Say
with
it
the
again?
surplus at the end of 2022. So that was what we were planning on doing this year, was to create that new, with the congregation's approval, of course.
Okay, so it could be either into the, or it could be a totally new,
It would
Fund.
probably be a new line, yeah.
and getting rid of like the facility reserve fund and,
Well, we're not getting rid of the facility repair reserve and the expense reserve fund. Chuck, do you want to talk a little bit about your proposed definitions? Okay, we have 5 minutes. It's a 5-minute signal.
So the idea of setting up these reserves is so we can really look out into the future and build a kitty, so if something should happen, we've got funds there to take care of it. So the expense reserve, as we're initially thinking about it, might be for those large type of expenses, those true emergency sort of things. Facility reserve fund could be used perhaps for the maintenance projects that aren't getting done, the painting of the church, the flooring that needs to be replaced, various things like that. But those are still under thoughts. There may be some dollar limits as to what those expenses would be. But the idea is that you got an expense for the big thing, and then another reserve for maybe the small day-to-day things that aren't included in our budget.
okay,
Another one we're looking at is, as I already touched on a little bit, is the mortgage reserve fund, mortgage reserve fund maybe with the idea that we're setting something aside to plan for an interest rate that might be something that we don't like. We don't know, but the idea is to do some planning in that. And the last one, I guess is actually the
Yeah.
operational expense. I don't like that sort of title, but I didn't like necessarily the benefit savings reserve when I thought what the first two initials said in front of the fund. So I
We
need
need
to
a
play
name.
with that one just a little bit more as well. But,
Chuck's Fund.
I use initials a lot, and that didn't sound very good. So anyway, we're looking at an operational thing to kind of cover what that is, but do we really need that? How do we plan around that? I think it's a question mark. I probably outside of the council would say I'm questioning that one yet, but anyway, that's where we are.
okay, so the expense reserve fund, to me, is talking about something that would be large, where you would almost want to capitalize it, as opposed to a facility repair would be more like operational, that you would expense it.
A tornado hits, we lose our roof.
Yeah.
We have a large deductible. We can't afford to do that. So the idea is this reserve would be set for that sort of thing, or maybe a large expense if we were to have an AC unit go out that exceeded, let's say, $20,000, that would be something that we could, so that's being defined as, say, an expense. The facility reserve would be, maybe we've got a project we'd like to do, but we haven't set aside the funds, so that would be more of a smaller term, again, maybe some dollar limits defined for those as well.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Our time's about up. My timekeeper says we have 2 minutes. Before I let you ask your question, can you put the last slide up? This is my email address. If you want all of the detail, send me an email and I will forward you this file. Okay, Elizabeth.
One more question. I would really like to know what this youth and family minister is going to be doing for his or her salary. And I understand there is in process, a new job description being formulated, is that correct?
The job description is being analyzed and our bookkeeper has suggested we take a look at that and set some goals and monitor progress toward goals. So
Will that be available for next week at our meeting?
Pastor Hill says no, it's not ready. So, okay, we probably have about 30 seconds left. Anything else? Thank you for coming. I hope you can support the budget. We put a lot of hard work into it. So, yes, Don.
Hi, I just wanted to say congratulations to the Budget Committee. This is the most thoughtful budget process that I have seen up to this point in 15 or 16 years. And I appreciate the good explanation. It was really well done. Thank you.
Thank you.